weirdest thing I've ever seen, but it'll work.
If it works. Okay.
Listen, that's not tripping answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. Where's Carlos? How you work this? It's already on? Oh, okay. All right, welcome. We are getting started in 1 to 2 minutes. So if there's anybody outside, we're going to go and bring them in. But thank you so much for joining us this morning. Looking forward to it.
He said you're going to showtime on him, huh?
Okay. Is everybody inside, outside? Where's Sandra? Oh, that's Sandra. Where's the rest of my team? Where they at? I don't know where she is. Okay, we're going to get started either way. All right, good morning again. Thank you so much for joining us. It is really quiet in here. I almost wish we had somebody's playlist. Thank you for joining us for this first event of GABWA's Corporate Law Section. I'm Darshine Kendrick, and I chair the Corporate Law Section. So you're going to hear from some of our partners and sponsors before we dive right into corporate transactions. So hopefully you have come prepared with an open mind, with some good questions for our panelists and an appetite afterwards, as we're going to have lunch. And you'll hear more from our sponsor about getting some great goodies if you have a business card to drop in. But before I bring up our esteemed GABWA president, I wanted to give a shout out to the leadership team of the Corporate Law Section to help put this together, keeping us on task. We have Sandra, who is the vice chair. We have Brittany, who is our marketing secretary over in the back. And I'm not sure where Nene went. Oh, there she is. Nene, who is our recording secretary. So we could not have put this together without all of their support. So thank you to the team, and thank you for all your support. So without further ado, I will bring up our president.
Good morning, everyone. I won't be long. She stole most of my thunder because I plan on introducing the corporate law section. But greetings. My name is Regine Bray. I have the honor of serving as the 44th president of the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys. And I want to give a special thank you to Darshan for reviving our corporate law section and doing such a phenomenal job this year in providing on-topic content for our members in this particular area. So welcome to the event. I've seen the agenda, the partners and the presenters. You are in for a treat, and I hope we will see you at some future GABWA events that we have. Just to give you an outline, we have our Demystifying Law School tonight, actually, for our college students who are planning to go to law school. Tomorrow we'll be hosting our GABWA fashion show. It's more about presentation and being your best self. It will be held at John Marshall Law School tomorrow evening. And on Friday, we are having our mentor-mentee match for our mixer for our woman-to-woman programming. And our general body meeting for the month of September will be September 18th at the Rice Center. And this will be a mental health topic for this one, and it is CLE approved as well. So I hope we see you then. And if you have not joined GABWA, we always welcome you to our community. And again, thank you for joining us today, and I'll pass it back to Darshan.
It's too quiet in here. Let's give her a round of applause for coming up here. Okay, all right, great. Stuff going. All right, so we could not have done this without our wonderful partners, one of which is Gate City. So we are going to have Carlos to come and give greetings on behalf of Gate City.
Thank you so much, Darshan. It is a little quiet in here. Are we ready? Are we ready? Are we ready? Yeah, all right. We have a great lineup for you, and I hope you're coming with your questions. My name is Carlos Emanuel. On behalf of Gate City, we want to welcome you. It's always a pleasure partnering with GABWA and GAWL. And what do you want to take away from today? If you're not sure, ask yourself, what's the one thing I want to take away from today? We have a great fireside chat coming. We have a panel coming. And if you're not a part of Gate City, we have even more coming. So make sure to sign up. If you're not a part of Gate City, gatecity.org. I'm sure we're all familiar with Gate City, but if you're not plugged in, please plug in. There's value you can add to not just this community, but to the greater community that we're all a part of. So thank you so much for being here. God bless.
All right, thank you so much for that. And our last partner, before we bring up the sponsors, is GAWL, the Georgia Association of Women Lawyers. And I thought I saw someone here from GAWL. Did I miss them? Okay, well, hopefully I did not miss them and they did not come in. I thought I saw Karima.
She was here. She might be outside.
Yeah, I thought I saw her. If somebody from the team can try and see if they can get her, then we will bring her in. Okay, so the sponsors that we had an accounting firm, Carter and Associates, and they could not be here today. And we also had an attorney that sponsored with us, Attorney Lukens. And last but not least, we had Truist, which is coming in to help us as a corporate sponsor. So did we find anybody? No? Okay. Yes? Oh, okay. So we'll hear from one of our partners, come on, with GAWL, and then we'll round it up with Truist, and then we'll get straight into our fireside chat.
Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Davis. I'm part of the GAWL Programming Committee. I actually just recently graduated from law school, was involved in the GAWL chapter at Emory, and loved the organization so much that I wanted to stay on with the statewide side and got involved with the Programming Committee. So we do events just like this. So partner with existing organizations to put on professionalism programs, CLE events. We have some community engagement opportunities too. Our organization seeks to connect Georgia Georgia women, Georgia lawyers across the state. So we have programming events with law schools as well as with more localized chapters. We have lunch and learns. We have mentorship and networking opportunities. It's a wonderful organization. I will give a shameless plug. We actually have a kickoff event this evening. So if you are interested in becoming part of the organization, or if you are part of it already or looking to get involved once again, feel free to come talk to me afterwards, and I'd love to give you more information. We're very happy to be here and to be working with all of you and on such an important topic. So.
All right, last but not least, the giveaways. So I know we can sit here all day, but everybody loves a good giveaway. So we're going to bring up our partners with Truist to tell you a little bit more about why they decided to partner with us, and also how you can potentially partake in the great spread that they have over here. So without further ado, Shauna.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shauna Heath. I work with Truist in our legal specialty group. I am a wealth advisor and a certified financial planner, and our group specifically works with attorneys and law firms like yourself here. Our goal is to really focus on the needs of our lawyer partners. We understand how hard you all work to help your clients, and our goal is to make sure that we help your money work hard for you. As Darshan mentioned, we have some great goodies, just giveaways. If you have a business card or you like to fill in a card, you can drop it in the box, and we'll just raffle them off for you guys. I also have a QR code and some information if you all would love to connect with me for a complimentary session or just a financial planning session. And I look forward to just talking with you all later on as we break through. Thank you so much.
All right, we can't do this without partners and sponsors, so give all of them another round of applause. We need help. I was voluntold to tell you that there is coffee outside and that lunch will be served after the program. So thank you for reminding me, Vice Chair. So without further ado, we're going to go to the initial part of our program, which is Fireside Chat with Roy Hadley. So as he joins me on stage here, we're down here, I'm going to read his bio. So for over 3 decades, Roy has been a trusted advisor to a diverse clientele, including high-growth businesses, governmental entities, on the right side, and technology-focused companies. His practice focuses on assisting clients with navigating complex corporate matters, including governance and compliance issues, technology transactions, general corporate counseling, and advising in leading-edge areas such as artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. Roy regularly counsels clients in negotiating and documenting intellectual property and information technology licensing and procurement agreements, transactional services and licensing agreements, hosting and cloud services agreements, consulting services and implementation agreements, collaboration agreements, and joint technology development agreements. And the list goes on and on and on. And so we're going to learn more about the work that Roy does, particularly with using AI in corporate transactions. So give him another round of applause while we start. All right, let's make sure these mics are on. Testing.
I hope so.
All right,
Yeah,
there we go.
we're
There we go. Okay, so this is meant to be a discussion where we get close and personal about using AI in our corporate transactions. So many of you know that the legal field tends to be a little bit behind when it comes to technology. But now that this technology is here and not going anywhere, we have to figure out how do we navigate this exciting space, but it's also can be filled with some landmines as far as ethical issues and things like that. And what better way in person to talk to than the expert in AI? So my first question to you is, how are you seeing attorneys use artificial intelligence, particularly in corporate transactions? And let's start with the good part. What are some of the benefits of using AI?
Thank you. All right, so just as a ground rule, happy to be here. Just excited to, kind of be in a position to share thoughts and answer questions and those sorts of things. So thank you for having me. Thank you, GABWA, for having me. Let me just, before I answer the question, threshold matter. How many of you have used AI just in your personal lives? Okay? Almost everybody. There are a couple people not paying attention, or they just not telling the truth, but, but that's okay too. Now, how many of you, another question, have used AI in your legal practice life? Okay, all right, good, all right. I got some people looking at me like, I don't do it. Yeah, okay. But there you go. So the question, which I'm getting old, I forgot already, but so I'll make up an answer to a question I wanted to answer.
Feel free, feel free.
AI is like most industries, really transforming the legal business. We've had AI for a long time. We called it different things. We called it big data. We called it machine learning. When you look at e-discovery has been around. People have been doing that for, I'm not going to say decades, but almost decades. I mean, so it's not a new technology per se. What transformed it was when a couple years ago when ChatGPT came out, and all of a sudden you could ask a question and you got what seemed like a human answer back, and that really was, I think, the seminal moment with respect to AI and how we think about and how we use AI. And when ChatGPT came out, people were like, oh man, this is really a great thing. What most people still don't realize is that ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, all of those that you use really are just using algorithms to predict the next best word, right? They're not coming up with novel thoughts. They're not, making stuff up. We have the thing about hallucinating and, seemingly making up information. But at their core, they're just predicting the next best word. They're getting better and better at it because the algorithms are being more defined. But what happened is you train, let's just say ChatGPT is a large language model. And these large language models are trained on information. These companies scrape the internet. They put in every document off the internet, and that's how they train the models. The problem with that is some documents or some things they train on are true. Some are false. Some are, well thought out. Some are made up. And they never really did kind of cut through all that and just say, okay, we're going to put the true documents on there. And so what you found was that when you say, hey, write me a brief on this topic, it would seem like it's making up, case sites. But it's not really making them up. It's pulling from bad sites, bad information, and just predicting the next best word, which just happened to be, in that instance, a false case site. And so that's, kind of how we have to look at all of these large language models, all of artificial intelligence, as what is it really doing? And so when we ask a question, what are we really thinking we're going to get out of it? And so we always have to be more concerned about that. Now, with that kind of threshold knowledge and understanding of what AI and these engines really are doing for you, or what they can do for you, when we start talking about using it in mergers, acquisitions, corporate law, any kind of law, we always have to have that little caveat in the back of our mind of what is this thing really doing for us? And what I caution is there are some things that it can absolutely do for you, and then there's some things that you need to be a little hesitant to let it do for you. I use it every day, but I don't use it to say, hey, write this memo for me, but I will use it to say, here are the things I'm thinking about, and we'll get into some other things like confidentiality and all of that. But I'll use it to say, hey, here's what I'm doing generally, kind of, and then I'll say, what are the issues that I need to be concerned about? And, that'll give me things that I need to be thinking about, but I'll never yet use it to say, give me a product that I can give to a client. Give me a product that I can give to the court, because it's not quite there yet, and arguably it may never get there. It's getting better and better, but it's never, I don't know that it's ever going to really get there, but it's a very useful tool. And as attorneys, we need to make sure that we are aware of the uses of it and what we should be using it for. But we also need to be cognizant of the constraints around it and, kind of what we shouldn't be doing, what our antennas are going to go up. I sit on the State Bar AI subcommittee trying to think about the rules and how we change the rules. The ABA just came out with some rules last year that we'll talk about that really go back to the traditional rules of practice, competency, and those sorts of things with an AI and technology lens on it that as lawyers we all need to be cognizant about. And I'll end my answer to this question that I probably didn't answer the question, but I get, not every day, but I frequently get a document from a client that says, hey, and they'll just be truthful, I use AI to do this. Can you look at it and tailor it for me and make sure it's right? And what I always say is, I can do that, but you're better off paying me just to start from scratch and use the forms and the knowledge I already have rather than try to make this document that you pulled off of ChatGPT work for you. Because it probably is more effort to get it up to speed than it is to just do what I do normally.
Yeah, and that's a good foundation. It's just a tool, not the end product. So you mentioned, the use of AI for you to sort of generate thoughts and things like that. But there are many attorneys that actually use it, maybe to start with a end product and maybe go back and sort of tailor it. For the attorneys that use AI as a jumping off part for the finished product, how would they disclose that to the client and to make sure that they are ethically in line with making sure that they're meeting their ethical obligations?
Right, great question, and that's kind of a fluid thing right now because the bar is struggling. Let's go back to AI as a tool. AI is a tool just like the internet was a tool, just like word processor is a tool. And so you have to keep that in mind. It's not the end all to be all. It's a tool. And where the struggle for lawyers is going to be is when we use this tool to create something, what do we need to disclose to the client? And how do you bill for it? For example, let's just say in a perfect world, you could put into ChatGPT and we'll say Harvey. Harvey is one that's tailored for the legal community. Let's just say you put in a query into Harvey, produces memo for me, it pops it out in 15 seconds, right? Do you bill 15 seconds to the client, or do you bill the 3 hours that it normally would have taken you to do that if you did it by scratch? No perfect answer right now. Just to be candid with you, what the bar does say is we have to revert to the regular, the bar rules, the regular rules of things like, and I had to write them down because you get old and you forget stuff and you won't remember them. But like Rule 1.1 ABA, that you are competently representing your client, right? And so you have to go back to that rule and say, okay, if I'm going to use AI to represent you, I need to know what I'm doing, right? I just can't type a query in and say, oh, I'm good to go. You need to know what you're doing. If confidentiality, you need to understand what that engine is doing, because if, what ChatGPT does is if you have the free model, you're paying, right? You're paying one way or the other. If you have the free model, what they do is they take what you put into it and use it to train the model going forward. So if you put a client's confidential information in theory, if somebody puts the right prompt in, it can pull that confidential information out. So like if you put in, your clients in the corporate setting, your client is paying $18.5 million for, this company. If I know what I'm doing, I might be able to query it and say, how much did, so-and-so pay for that company? It can spit out that 18.5 million because you put it in there and then it trained the model on it. And so you have to understand that. Even with the paid versions, you have to still be very careful. The paid versions, they'll say, oh, we don't train on your data. I'm not entirely sure of that. I mean, you're trusting, a company that, or companies that maybe can't be trusted. And even in, a lot of people, who in here works for like an AmLaw 200 or above firm? Okay, a few hands went up. So a lot of the bigger firms are developing their own AI models, their own in-house AI models, where they say, okay, we're just going to train these models on our data, our reports, our stuff, our memos, our briefs. And the thought there being that if we do that and we train it on ours, we won't get hallucinations. It won't hallucinate because it's being trained on true data, but it will, but you all, even then you have to be concerned because those models, I'm still putting confidential information into it. And, that confidential information won't go outside of the firm, but you still have internal confidentiality issues that you have to worry about. So if you, put your client's information in and say, I want a brief on this, that, and the other, we don't have to worry about it going outside of the firm. But what if I, say I need a brief, blah, 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 and that model has been trained on your client's data that you put in there, I may get information that, proprietary information from your client on mine. So you can have that kind of leakage that you have to be concerned about. And I don't know that those types of issues have been fully addressed yet for firms that are developing their own internal models. And then you have situations where sometimes you'll have firewalls where, you represented a client, I represented a client, and they are adverse to each other, but the firm says, we're going to put in a firewall and you won't be able to see my client's data and I won't be able to see yours. That works when we're talking about, file management systems. We could put in something that says Roy can't access, that particular client's data or documents or anything like that. But when we start putting all of this into that AI melting pot that we're doing, then you potentially can get that leakage, across those firewalls. And so firms still have to be cognizant and really think through a lot of how AI is being processed, even if they have their own internal models that they're paying hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for, because you still have those confidentiality expectations for the bar rules, that you are treating your client's information as confidential. Confidentiality can, we think of it externally, which is true. But we also, in the realm of AI and how we're using models, especially if they're proprietary models, to our companies or to our law firms, internally, confidentiality has a big role to play also.
Yeah, Lassie, we could spend all day on this. So I want to shift a little bit because this is a event with a partnership with 3 organizations that serve minorities, women and the African American community. And one of the sub-issues with using AI has always been about the discrimination that can get outputted, because AI is only as good as the input.
Correct.
You only get out of AI what you put in.
Right.
And so it is a learning module. So as people put in information, it's only going to spit out what has been fed in. Even particularly with my law firm representing private equity firms, a lot of their AI models they're using to choose what companies to buy and sell. But, if you put in like a hair care company, it automatically assumes that it's owned by a black person, right? And so it has all these biases and gives a lower score than somebody who maybe has a tech company, because that's seen as more of the traditional white male. So talk to us about how, if there's anything we can do to mitigate those risks where we're using AI, we're using it responsibly, but the outputs still might have a lean and a bias.
Okay, great question. And what I would say, the outputs absolutely will have a bias to them. They will lean a certain way. They will absolutely have biases. And the problem, again, getting back to kind of the threshold of where we started, you just have to remember how these models are trained, right? They're trained on data out there in the real world, and that data that they're trained on is biased. It's going to have redlining, kind of built into it in the mortgage home ownership situation. It is going to have credit scoring bias in the financing situations. And so what you have to do, and I do some work with companies around mitigating bias and those sorts of things, you have to put in governance structures, you have to put in compliance structures to, one, understand that bias and then mitigate it. And nowadays mitigation, or it's all lumped into DE&I, and somehow that's turned into the boogeyman, and everything's going to be even. Well, it's not an even playing field. It's not an even playing field if you take AI out of the equation. It's not an even playing field if you bring AI into the equation. So you still, from a legal standpoint, you still have, from a corporate standpoint, have to understand what these models are doing, and you have to have a human in the loop. Right now, there's no way to take the human out of the loop when you start talking about looking at what these models and these programs are providing to you. They're good at analyzing data, just huge troves of data, but you still have to look at that data with a suspect eye and say, okay, let's normalize these outputs. And every person in this community cannot just be a bad credit risk just because they live in this community. And you see that all the time. You saw it before AI, and you will continue to see it after AI. And so you have to be purposeful about normalizing it. And as an attorney, you have to have your yellow flag up anytime you get that kind of data and that kind of output, whether it's a corporate, whether it's criminal, it really doesn't matter. You have to be at the forefront, and I would argue it's your responsibility to understand what's going on and to question it, because if you don't, these biases they're kind of baked into the system before AI, and they're baked into the system with AI, that you just have to be cognizant of it and be prepared to question it and challenge outputs and data sometimes. And part of your ability to question it and challenge it is going to be your understanding of AI and what AI does and how it's trained and how those models are going to put that data out there, and be able to say, okay, all it's doing is predicting the next best word. It's not, going to come up with some magical formula that is going to say, okay, this person is a good credit risk, this person is not. Just like normal, models that people have traditionally used aren't really good about saying this person is that or this person is that, just based on where they live, where the race is. It really doesn't matter. You're starting to see it with healthcare, and I see your question. You're starting to see it with healthcare, where people are being denied reimbursements or being denied care, being denied coverage because of certain things that these AI models are outputting. But before AI, again, AI is just taking data that's already out there. It's not making up data. Before AI, black people, for example, were less likely to get pain medication because when, they said, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And you say 8, it was, in the doctor's mind, discounted back to a 5, and you didn't get pain medication. Now you're starting to see these, big healthcare companies that have the, LLM, the large language models and the AI algorithms that are denying coverage to people based on data. But that data was biased before the AI model got there and started dealing with it. So, again, as attorneys, we just have to make sure that we understand what it is that's happening with these models and be in a position to say, I'm going to challenge that output, or let's look at it a little bit more, because we can't just carte blanche necessarily trust that this AI model is somehow going to take good data, bad data, and filter it out and just say, my output is good data. So we had a question.
So two things on that. One would be like, it would, I guess one of the ways to kind of mitigate that, or if I didn't know that there was bias, would be to ask the AI to provide me the source of where it's getting its data points from, and then also would you be able to query the AI to say, are there any biases built in? Because I know sometimes you get, the more information you feed in, the better results you get usually.
Correct. So two great points. And the question for those that didn't hear it was, how can you ask AI itself to help mitigate the biases in those outputs? That's kind of a summary. You can ask AI to do that, and it's getting better and better. There are these things called reasoning models now, and understanding how you prompt a model can come up with better things. ChatGPT 5 just came out not too long ago, and at first it kind of fell flat because the way it was analyzing stuff people didn't understand it. And so with ChatGPT 5, one of the things that you could do was at the end of whatever query you wrote, put in pay attention to detail and think longer. And if you put that in there, just that little phrase, you got a much better output from it. And so to your point, one of the things you can do is, put your query in and then go back and challenge the model and just say, what biases might be included in your answer. Where did a lot of them now, depending on how you put the prompt in, will actually give you the sources, give you the sites back to where it pulled the data from, and then you need to go back and look at the data. Just like if it gives you a site, shame on an attorney that puts a site in a brief and doesn't check it, right? That's not on ChatGPT or the model. That's not on them. That's on you. Because if you think, it's just like an associate of a third-year associate gives me a brief, I'm probably going to go back and just make sure that at a minimum the case exists. Right. I may not read it, but at a minimum, I'm gonna make sure it exists, and I'm gonna probably read the little key points up at the front, and just make sure it's generally on point. So, again, yes, it's a great thing to challenge the models, challenge it. Like if I ask it to give me an outline of the critical issues on a particular thing, I will go back and say, is there anything else that I need to consider? Are there other points that might be relevant? And, I would say 8 times out of 10, it will give you more. And so you can't take, to your point, you can't take that original output and say, that is it. That is the holy grail. That is the answer. You do have to challenge it. And if you challenge it, you will get ultimately better outcomes. I typically, just as a side note, will go through 6 to 10 different iterations of something, just going back, challenging it. And you can even ask it, what was its thought process in coming up with this? And it'll give you kind of a background of what it was thinking about, air quotes going, in coming up with that answer. And then that will give you more insight into what was it doing, how was it coming up with this answer that it gave me.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about ChatGPT and encouraging lawyers to really get comfortable with it is it really is modeled for you to have a conversation with it like you would a human. So it might seem intimidating, but it's literally meant to take on the place of a human. So the same way that you would argue, with getting a teenager to do something or with your spouse or with opposing counsel, it's the same sort of conversations that you're having. You're just having it with a computer. So if you're challenging their logic a certain way, you can do the same thing with ChatGPT. Now, the last question before I walk around with the mic is, what happens if people don't do all this great advice? Who is liable? What is the worst case scenario that can happen?
So the worst case is you get disbarred, right? But also you can come up with bad outcomes for your client and bad outcomes for yourself. Because again, those traditional bar rules. You asked a question earlier about what do you tell your client? Well, there's a duty, and it's Rule 1.4, to communicate effectively with your client and to get consent and informed consent to do certain things. And so it's starting to take the shape of, if you're using AI to do something, you need to let your client know. You need to be transparent with them and let them know what you're doing and get their consent to doing it. And that's not an AI thing, that's just a practice in law thing. But it's a traditional rule, but it also will play into what you're doing with AI. And so to answer your question though, whose responsibility is? It's yours. As the attorney, it's yours. And if you are in an in-house situation, you need to be in a position to help the executive team to understand what they're doing, to help them to mitigate, and understand the risk and take appropriate action to mitigate those risks. I do a lot with technology teams and to help them understand, the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, or the Chief Information Security Officer, to help them understand what AI is and the risk associated with it. If your client is doing development work, for example, there are intellectual property considerations with using AI. There are copyright implications with using AI. And so as lawyers, for good or for bad, we need to understand those underlying principles, and we also need to understand those risks and be able to effectively communicate those internally to our firms and our lawyers in our firms and to our clients, whether that client is a legal officer of a company, a general counsel, or whether that client is a technology person or a business person. And I think we as lawyers are in a unique position to communicate those things, just like we're in a unique position to communicate most things to clients, whether it's a legal issue or whether it's a business issue, an operational issue, those sorts of things. But bad things can happen. You be disbarred, but also your company, if you put something out there that's AI and it's all of a sudden, that tool is, you get a class action suit because it's biased and it's shown to be biased, your company's value, your client's value could go down, be forced into bankruptcy. The goodwill associated with the company can take a tremendous hit. So there are economic consequences that can be severe if AI is used inappropriately and you put something out there in the marketplace. And it's just, there was the actress Sweeney, I forget what Sydney Sweeney. They just had, and they blamed it on AI, I don't know if it was AI, but they said that they came up with this ad, she has good genes, right? And they were talking about genes, but people took it to mean genes, like, the way I look, my genetics. And there was a tremendous backlash associated with it. And now, again, Cracker Barrel, not AI, but, they just redid their little sign, their image, and took a tremendous hit in the marketplace because of that. And AI can do the same thing, just on steroids. So you have to be very careful about what you're doing with it.
Okay, we got time for one question, sorry.
I'll be quick. We had two, so I'll be quick in my answer because I talk all day.
Yeah, I have a question about liabilities for companies that build in that kind of bias for defamatory statements. Is there liability to the AI companies if you can prove that the bias was intentional and caused economic damage?
When you say the AI company, like the OpenAI or the Google, no. The bottom line, if you're using their engines, no. They're pretty much as is really what it comes down to. And so if you use it and you come up and you put something out there that's defamatory, biased, or whatever, coming off of that engine, yeah, they'll take a reputational hit because their engine came up with it, but you and your company will be the main ones. And if you try to litigate against an OpenAI or Microsoft or Google, good luck. I mean, they'll bury you, with litigation. One more.
I just had a quick question. So I've always been the believer of this, and you touched on this, but AI will never replace the cognitive ability of the brain, right?
Correct.
But you touched on, AI becoming this melting pot of data and an aggregator of data. If you think about when ChatGPT first became popular, I think it was January of 2023,
right.
And you look at the explosive usage, have you all started to have conversations around, well, perhaps it kind of fixes itself in terms of the bias, because as more people, you think about the diversity of the entire world and who has access to internet and some of these models, that we will get to a point someday where there's not going to be no discrimination or bias, but where there's less of it as more and more users start to put information in and run queries.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It will never get there. Okay. And the reason it will never get there is if you look at the internet right now, it's still scraping, training the internet. If you look at the vitriol that is put out there from the alt-right and the right and the influencers and just hatred, vitriol, untruths, disinformation that's just pumped out there, all of that is still being trained into these models because they don't have it's so much of it that there's no way that you could have a human looking at everything coming in and making a value judgment. Anyway, you're making a value judgment on somebody's right to free speech. All of that's continuously being trained in. So yeah, you may have people that are trying to adjust, right? But you're still having this disinformation being fed in. And in the current political environment, you're seeing companies, in order to curry favor, cutting back on safeguards and protection. So Meta, for example, has severely cut back on the people the groups that went out and looked at stuff. If you reported something, they would say, okay, let's look at it and we take it down or whatever. Severely cut back on that, not only with AI, social media in general. You look at Instagram, Facebook, any of those social platforms, Twitter, those divisions that used to be responsible for policing information, policing vitriol and hatred, they're gone. And so all of that is just being sucked into these engines and training these engines. And so the answer is absolutely not. There's no way that it will ever get better at that because all that bad information is being fed in. So that just doubles down on our responsibility, I would argue, to be at the forefront, the vanguard of understanding models and how they're being trained, and then being in a position to question or challenge the outputs of those in any given situation.
Thank you. Well, I know we could spend a whole nother hour on this because this is an important topic, but give Attorney Hadley a round of applause for spending time with us. So we have a break, so if you still have a lingering question, hopefully Mr. Hadley can answer that to you. But if you are a panelist, in about 10 minutes, if you can join me on stage. But we do still have, I think we still have coffee out. Make sure that you put your name and information into the raffle. And then we're going to have a raffle right now. Shauna is going to come up and bring and do a raffle in 1 minute while I take a picture with Mr. Hadley. So if you do not have your card over there, you're missing out. So make sure you go over there and put your card in because we're going to give away some goodies in between the break. So thank you again.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thanks for everybody. Always fun. Oh, we're gonna sit back down.
We're gonna pretend like
Kind of pose.
We're gonna,
like
yeah,
we're-
pretend.
I'm gonna give one that has this logo and then one that's red. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you. You know, nobody thinks that works.
I know. You and me both.
Nobody thinks that works.
Right, right.
They're like, what do you do all that?
Yes, I'm running.
Right.
Right. Say I'm running. Oh, my pleasure.
That was great. So I'm Hillary Sandra. Nice to meet you. I'm not an attorney, transparency. But I wanted to
Oh, you switch. Let me get a mic.
because these are just some good conversations where I kind of feel like people
Okay, good. I love it. That's why I like doing fireside chats, because
I feel like I'm in the
it's so good and credible because a lot of that we talk about anchors like me. Think about
Oh yeah, you put the coffee back there. That way so everybody doesn't have to
oh, smart.
you know what I mean?
I didn't know they allowed us to have it, so I thought that's why you said that.
Goodwill.
You know they got so many doggone rooms around.
They had the pictures roll, but I was like, Sandra thinks that we can do it, so I'm gonna just do it. Like, and if I get slapped in the wrist, then I'll just be slapped in the wrist.
But she's like, for this event, we're going to ask forgiveness. Okay. Yeah, so they're going to do a lot. They're doing a live stream, but we didn't advertise it, obviously. So they're going to record it, and I'll send it out so that we can sort of replay it. That's why I like recording.
Also, get to do pictures or not? Just a video.
I think they just hired her for videos. I got to find somebody to give me a picture because I've got it in my phone.
You need a picture?
That's right. That's right. So,
You want to get one now since we have?
Yeah, let's do it.
Where you want to get it? Where you want to get it?
fantastic. What about you? Okay. See, you know, I still got little kids. I got girls. Yeah.
My daughter's 33 and living in LA on her own. I'm going out there for my birthday.
See, I hate y'all. I was telling Rose. I'm great. I'm really good. I'll probably come in there. And he's from China. And I'm like, oh, I'm going through the
I told my cousin, he's like, I'm doing this she applied, Lake County, and they had already kind of filled the class out. So she's at the University of Houston.
Okay.
But I took her, it was great. It was a great experience.
The one thing we will and
look, she can tell me she was applying until so far into the process that I couldn't really have I would have if I had known. You know somebody around the way. You can't guarantee it. And people know when they look out for you.
and what?
Because it's very
Thank God he did. Yeah. Right.
And then do you want us to?
Oh, yeah. I can play some dramatic music for you, but she's fine. Okay. Let me watch out. Oh, do you want the mic or you want the?
I'll do it over here since I'm
Okay.
just gonna talk.
Because I know she's. I'm giving her a chance to breathe. But I'll be out there. I planned a trip to Houston. She would be in everything.
Right.
Thanks for your question.
You know, it's all good.
She's where she's supposed to be.
And that's how it is. I'm like, you know, you learn.
You need anything for the family?
Nope, we had water and my cousin's his wife.
Okay.
He's like, you my cousin.
For you.
All I need is 1 or 2.
I'll go around. You know, I'm a photographer, low key on the side. I would have brought my camera.
Can everyone hear me okay? Sorry to break up. I'm going to start the raffle. So there's going to be 3 that I'm going to give away now. And then once we break for lunch, we'll do the last 3. So did everybody get to put their contact information or card in here? I'm going to say yes. Okay. Do you want to do the pulling? Let me have you do the pulling. Miss Sandra G's gonna do the pulling, so you can't get mad at me if you don't win. Okay. Wait, there's one stuff right here.
I mean, I signed up for one of her consultations as well. Yeah, well, I definitely gotta get
Okay. Okay, so the first one, Regina Tisdale. Regina, that's my mom's name. Come on up, Regina.
So I won't call y'all.
Okay. Next. I know Sandra wants one. I'm not gonna look. I'm not. Okay. Take a business card. Okay.
Are you on LinkedIn?
Oh, Regine. No, that's not Regine. Oh, Regine. Oh, she left. Well, we're gonna give Regine hers. I don't know. Are you gonna see her tonight? We're gonna give Regine the air purifier, and then the last person. Levine. Lori. I'm so sorry. Lori Thomas Williams. I do. Lori. Oh. Come on down, Lori. Okay, we'll do the last three at lunch, guys.
All right, we're going to start in 3 minutes. So if you're a panelist, can you join me on stage? And congratulations to those of you that won my gifts from Truist. Enjoy those. We're getting started in 3 minutes. So if you're a panelist, please join me on stage.
I was gonna say, is there any water?
Nope.
They're junior
No, you're fine.
In person, anyway.
Right, I know.
I'm so sick. We didn't get we were you know why I'm saying that she's pretty good I'm like nerding out, you know. I could tell you were like,
It's fascinating stuff. It's involving every day, and there's they can recognize. And we anticipated that too, because I remember coming through AI meetings and stuff, because I was fascinated. I don't know, confused, but I wanted to see, because I know it's gonna come. But yeah, but what I'm seeing is that the last ones are increasing the hours. The drama is going on. So 2,100 is a lot. And most people are 1,800. That's not easy. 24 hours. You have to be a community, because they work so you have to be a community. Yeah, education.
Okay, all of y'all read.
Wait a minute, my kids might be able to.
But what did I tell you about Androids? I love y'all's photos.
That's true, they take the best photos, but I don't know.
I don't know what the Plebitarians do.
That is funny, because I started with iPhone 1, and so now it's so much easier to just
That's right.
Even though I was involved and I wait 2 years before I get it, but
Or even when I do upgrade, or there's a software upgrade, I have to get used to it all over again.
exactly, because they just change all the settings, and I had a
Yesterday, they announced a new one. So,
yeah, it's coming in what, 2 weeks or something, the 17th.
yeah. I know. It should be frustrating asking me.
Oh, screen time.
See, there's always one.
You should have asked ChatGPT.
Oh, Lord. I thought it was you. Guess it's Charles.
Yes, yeah. So I'm just telling Sandra, I was like, oh, his commentary. Okay, I might be in Israel, because I did tech companies, and so even though I'm trying to trade practice, we're having some of those same discussions, because a lot of the things, and I spend most of my time honestly with attorneys anyway, but a lot of the things, based on contracts, copyright, IP, determine valuations, enterprise value, capacity, all that kind of stuff. So we have to work into CTOs and stuff. So I appreciate that conversation. I love
that. Okay, we are ready for the second part of this event. So if you could get your coffee and find a seat. We are ready to have a really, really good discussion from our panel of experts. So I'll start off by letting each one of them briefly introduce themselves. I find when they introduce themselves, it's a lot more interesting than reading the bio. So we will start to my left with Hillary.
Good morning. Hillary Stanfield. I am with Truist, and I work in the middle market segment, and I primarily bank technology companies. And so just telling Roy, I was nerding out to everything that he was saying, because I know all of those scenarios intimately well. So pleasure to be here.
Alrighty, I'm Sandra Jean. I'm the vice chair for the corporate section of GABWA, working with Darshan. I am primarily a labor and employment attorney, but when I went in-house, back in 2005, they started putting HR under me, and I rose up to the C-suite until I left in 2022 and started my own firm, the Gene Consulting Group. And I pretty much support businesses with not only their HR support, but also anything labor and employment related. So I negotiate a lot of union contracts, and I also help with a lot of the employment contracts and employment related ADA, EEOC, OSHA, you name it, all those. And then I also do the HR part of it. So I'm happy to add to the conversation with my knowledge base and how that my department comes into play. when we have mergers and acquisition or divestitures.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lukens Rivil. I'm an attorney. I'm a tax attorney who's based out of Woodstock, Georgia. I practice at Amore Law. So my specialty is in tax law, and I'm here today to contribute to the conversation by helping you guys understand the tax consequences of mergers and acquisition transactions.
All right. And I'm Darshan Kendrick again, and I am the founder of K-Rose Capital Legal Advisors. My law firm is a securities law firm and investment advisory firm because I have a Series 65. So we guide founders and funders through the capital raising and mergers and acquisitions process. So let's get started. Okay, so this first question is for from you, Hillary. So when we talk about mergers and acquisitions and buying, selling businesses, what are some of the red flags that the attorneys in the room need to know that can really derail financing and following through with any M&A deal that you might see?
Absolutely. So from a banking perspective, there are a lot of red flags. I would say that the primary red flags would really be outdated or incomplete financials, unclear cash flow forecasting, and also unresolved legal or compliance issues, right? All of those can definitely derail and elongate the process as we're going through due diligence and underwriting. And so where we can collaborate with attorneys and how attorneys can collaborate with our clients is really in helping them look at their contracts, their corporate structure, as well as resolving any governance issues far in advance of when financing discussions occur. And so if they're having ongoing conversations or the banker's having ongoing conversations with clients and they know that, potentially in the next, 12 to 18 months, there will be a need for financing, they need to be working with them then to iron all of those things out.
Very good information. Next, we're going to hop on over to Sandra. So when we were talking about mergers and acquisitions, I think a lot of time people forget that you're not only moving assets and that people are part of that, their assets. So how early in the process should attorneys engage someone like yourself that is knowledgeable about the human resources portion of it?
Thank you for that question. As early as possible. A lot of times people don't think about bringing in HR until after the deal is done. And they're like, okay, now we need to move the people. But when you think about everything that goes into the people side of the business, you're thinking about there are employment contracts that you need to understand what are the notice requirements. There's also potentially severance agreement that could add to the financial burden of the company. You have people on workers' comp that people don't think about, but those people are liabilities that need to be accounted for. And also just preparing employee morale. When people hear there's going to be a merger or acquisition, divestitures, they're thinking, how is that going to impact me? And HR needs to understand and prepare for that event so that they can support you as the attorneys are focusing on the contractual liabilities and such. HR can be a good partner to start preparing the people, think about the benefits implication, everything else that go with the people side of the business.
Mm-hmm. Last but not least, Attorney Lukens, so we know that taxes are going to be a big part of any M&A transaction, and obviously there are some differences if you're doing a stock purchase or doing a cash purchase. But tell us sort of high level, what are your 3 most common tax pitfalls that attorneys need to be thinking about when they're helping a client through this process?
Absolutely. So as we discuss our favorite subject today, tax law, there will be some terms which most of us who don't practice tax law will not be familiar with, and I'll provide you guys a general definition so you guys can better understand. And as you stated so eloquently, tax law permeates M&A transactions. As Benjamin Franklin said, 2 things are certain: only death and taxes. So when it comes to M&A transactions, having a competent tax counsel is very important, because most importantly, the main pitfalls which tend to occur in M&A transactions are revolving basis and built-in capital gains. So basis is the value of an asset or a stock once you first acquire it. And the issues around basis will arise when you purchase, let's say, an asset or a stock. basis will be treated differently, and there will be different tax consequences as a result. So that's very important that this is ironed out before you enter into an M&A transaction. The second issue is around built-in capital gains. So C corporations have what's called built-in capital gains, which even if they change the status of their entity, so for instance, let's say they change from a C corporation to an S corporation within 5 years before the sale of a stock or an asset or a company, that transaction will still be considered, it will still be treated as a taxable event, even if they were to change their statuses. So all in all, there are a lot of different considerations to take into effect when a lot of tax consequences to take into effect when you have an M&A transaction, and we'll discuss them further down the road.
Okay.
Can I provide an example?
Sure.
Okay. That's an excellent point because I was just engaged in a transaction with one of my tech clients. The genesis of their business was embedded finance and payments, and they had a component of their business that was spun off. The component of their business that was spun off was essentially a payroll sort of service for their maritime operations. So essentially, they provided payments and payroll to people who work on cruise ships. And so that business was spun off to a Dubai-based company. And so instead of doing an asset purchase, they did a stock purchase because their simplicity of execution, it's faster, and there are also tax advantages. So we absolutely see that all the time.
And the other thing he mentioned that I want to make sure is highlighted is the sometimes employee stock options. When you're doing mergers and acquisitions, there are options that certain executives have that will have an impact on the future of the business, or depending on what it looks like, if it's an acquisition versus a merger, or even depending on how you structure the deal. So that is another reason why HR needs to be at the table, because those are huge benefits that need to be accounted for in addition to your normal run-of-the-mill, benefits that people may get.
Mm-hmm. As I always tell clients that are going through a merger or acquisition, it's a bit of a dance because there's a lot of things happening that have to happen at the same time. One person steps, the other person does something. So making sure that we have all those professionals on the same page early in the process, like you all, is vital to making sure that that deal gets done and it gets done the right way. So thank you again for being here. So we're going to go back to Hillary. So, M&A, the process can last as long as, people are stonewalling or need to get the information they need to make the best decision. So how would you advise that clients work with bankers early on to make sure that there's continuous conversations, particularly for attorneys, because, we were trained to say no to everything, right? We were trained to look for the bad in everything. I tell people I'm a professional pessimist. And so sometimes lawyers can get stuck in that process. A lot of M&A deals get stuck because of attorneys. So how do you advise us to work with not only bankers, but others in the process early on in order to make sure that we are communicating and moving it forward and not getting stonewalled?
Yeah, so great question. And you'll hear this a lot. I've already heard it a couple times on this panel. Early and often is kind of, what I live by. As sort of best practice, rule of thumb, get the data room set up and set up early. One of the key things that slows deals down is when information is not sent or information is not conveyed or communicated simultaneously. And so getting that data room, and I know it seems like a very administrative task, but getting that data room set up early is very key. Making sure that bankers, advisors, or attorneys, whomever else needs access to that information can get it is essential. Not only that the information is disseminated simultaneously, but there are also real-time updates. I think I was talking to my team a few weeks ago, and we were talking about, on average, when you have a data room that's set up, at the beginning of conversations or when an LOI is signed versus when it's set up, several weeks later, you can actually, close a deal in about 2 weeks earlier. So getting that data room set up is very much key. Again, I'll go back to one of my earlier comments, is just looking at, and I actually had this with a recent deal that I closed, looking at your client's customer contracts, very important. If there is not, assignment or there's no specifications, let's say, for instance, your client is buying a supplier, and there is no sort of assignment provision, meaning that the contracts with their customers do not specify if they can be transferred or assigned if that entity is either, bought out, merged, or restructured. That is a very much a key risk, because what that does is it does not provide sort of guarantee of revenue post-transaction. And that's a huge liability, a huge risk for lenders, because you're essentially saying, well, one, I don't know if I'm going to have that client because there's no assignment provision, and two, if I don't have that client, what is the revenue impact, right? Because then that has, impact on our underwriting. Well, maybe we were underwriting to $50 million in EBITDA, but if you lose that customer, which generates, $10 million in EBITDA, well, that's a big deal. So I think just understanding, and working with attorneys and having an understanding of the provisions and the contracts up front are very much key.
Very insightful. Thank you so much for that. So we're going to skip over to Attorney Lukens. Cross-border deals. So, the world is very global now. But even across states, every state has different tax laws and things like that. How do you work with the client to make sure that they understand the tax implications of not just, when they get to closing, but sort of throughout the process? How do you get them to understand, what the tax consequences are going to be once this deal does end up closing?
Absolutely. So when you're working in cross-border transactions, you need to first make sure that you have local counsel in the different nations where you'll be operating, because you cannot assume that you're operating under U.S. tax law, even if it may be intuitive or whatnot. You need to inform your client that you need adequate legal counsel in every single nation that you'll be operating in. Furthermore, you need to also understand the various treaties which govern the tax relationships between the various countries. So, for instance, the United States is what's called an OECD country, which comprises of the 20 largest economies on the planet. And most OECD countries are members of a treaty called BEPS, which is Base Erosion Price Shifting, which essentially is a fancy way of trying to say we're preventing entities or multinational corporations from getting tax benefits in one country and then not avoiding paying tax in another country. So these countries, they work together across borders to ensure that they're able to have various entities, which are tax-paying entities, pay the proper amount of taxes that they owe. Furthermore, you need to also ensure what the legal tax framework is. So, for instance, the OBA, or the One Big Beautiful Bill, which just passed, has completely changed the cross-national tax framework. So, for instance, GILTI, which stands for generally intangible and low taxable items, has completely been eliminated. So for now, foreign entities which are owned by American entities, which are called CFCs, controlled foreign corporations, they're going to be taxed in a different manner than previously. So you have to be aware of all of these various moving parts. And as you know, I've always been told, the tax law is consistently shifting. So you have to ensure that you're working with your clients to inform them of various changes in the regulations, both domestically and foreign, internationally.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Back to Attorney Sandra. So what are some best practices for handling employee contracts, non-competes, retention bonuses, all of this during due diligence? Because as you can imagine, one of the sort of heightened points during an M&A deal is the employees are wondering, will I have a job by the end of this all, right? And so they're on edge, but you still have a job to do in terms of making sure all the contracts and things that are together. So what's the best way for the company to handle all of that during this due diligence process?
I'll start with it depends, because it depends on, because attorneys love to say it depends.
That's a very lawyer answer right there.
It depends, because I've supported companies that are, the largest provider of long-term care services, and I also supported small companies that operate within a state. And so when you operate within a state, your checklist is a little different because you focus on the local laws, you look at, so you do an audit, and you tailor the audit checklist towards, what's important to that client. When you're dealing with a bigger entity, then you have to think cross states, almost like what you were saying, and think about the local laws. There are WARN Act notices to keep in mind. Generally, it's 60 days, but there might be localities that require different or more stringent requirements for employees. To your point, there might be some employees that have employment contracts that you need to understand what the terms of those contracts are, because they're going to have consequences when you're anticipating a merger, acquisition, or something to that effect. Your checklist may also contain, like, looking at what employees have pending lawsuits that you need to know about, because whoever the other party is, they're going to want to know what lawsuits are pending, what are the likelihood of these lawsuits coming back to haunt them, and that's also going to be incorporated in your overall contract that is finalized with the other party. Just having a checklist, I have checklists, that's what I do. Again, this is why it's so important to start as early as possible in the process, because you want to give all the stakeholders, including HR, the opportunity to understand something's coming. They have to do an audit so they can be ready. And then there's the back and forth. You talked about the data room, I think you called it. I call it the war room, whatever it is.
Sometimes it's
that you that you call it. You know, when all the parties, the stakeholders come in the room, and I'm talking about internal stakeholders, not even the other party, but just as part of your due diligence. HR and others need to have that opportunity to prepare, go back to their checklist, make sure they're looking at every part of how the people side is going to be impacted, and then, have that ongoing dialogue with the other parties involved.
It's a lot. Like I said, it's a dance. Okay, so this is a question that is not on your pre-screened list that I sent to you, but it's an easy one. So, there are a lot of people that are involved, a lot of things that are going on, particularly during the due diligence process, and so it's a lot of people, in and out of the data room and doing this and checking that. Particularly for each one of your roles, why is it so important that instead of somebody trying to do it on their own or by themselves, why is it particularly important to have you in those discussions as early as possible, as opposed to using ChatGPT to, I don't know what you use ChatGPT for during the due diligence process, but why is it important in your role to have you in those discussions?
I'll start. So I would say, I'll go back to something that I mentioned previously, customer contracts. You want to have some visibility into customer contracts and, what that impact may be on the company's financials. I'll touch on something that Roy touched on earlier, is how you look at IP, how you look at, the agreements that they have, how you look at copyrights, because a lot of the things that you all do, you all are key to this, right? Like I was just telling someone, I probably spend more time on the phone with attorneys than I do my actual clients. But a lot of what you all do in terms of drafting agreements, how you are able to set up different provisions as a part of the credit agreement, really go into determining how we either look at enterprise value of a company, looking at the collateral of a company, looking at their borrowing capacity. So I'll go back to my previous example. If there's a customer contract and it doesn't have assignment provisions, that's a huge issue. So instead of looking at, X number of EBITDA, we're going to say, no, we don't have confidence that you can keep that contract. And we have very robust underwriting guidelines, and obviously, Truist is a bank and most other banks are held to the same standard. One of the other things I'll say, Sandra, you'll appreciate this, banks put a premium, lenders put a premium on management teams. it gives us confidence when we know that there's some sort of operational handoff or transition. It gives us confidence when we know that the deal team that's driving whichever deal that we're working on is going to be there post-close. Because if not, and you have people defecting or you have unexpected departures, it can have a really negative impact on cash flows, growth, and the ability to service debt. And I'll wrap my question up with, again, yes, another example. I had a client last year. It's a live event ticketing company. They do distribution of tickets, I should say. And they acquired another company. It was essentially a merger, but they acquired the company. The company was about the same size as them. And they had no employee contracts in place. I know you were just, this is, they had no employment contracts in place. And so, as you all know, there are redundancies when there's M&A, right? You don't need 2 CEOs. You don't need 2 CFOs. You don't need 2 COOs. And so, you start to have, some of your key stakeholders and some of your management, maybe they say, you know what, I have a family. Let me hedge my bets and start looking for something else. And so, when you don't know how long, a key stakeholder or C-suite person or board member is going to stay on, and then they leave, there's a loss of institutional knowledge. And so in this particular example with my client, they had exactly that happen, and they actually did not get their audit to us when they were supposed to. That is a technical default per the credit agreement. And then they also had to bring in an outside third party. I think they brought in PwC to help them with their accounting and their revenue recognition. And so it's a mess.
Dropped on that point.
It was a mess. It's still a mess.
I'll pick up what you just said. It's a mess too around the people side, because I always say to my clients, there are 2 ways you can lose money. One, your customers that you either sell products or services to can sue you because they didn't think you did a great job. Or your employees, your internal customers can come back. And I usually focus on the internal customers. That's a big source of liability for a lot of companies that they don't realize until they're in the mess. So to your point, I'll give a couple of examples. I'm supporting a couple of clients right now that pretty much scaled up and didn't really have the proper support when they were scaling or getting ready to scale, and now they're in a hot mess. And it's all from the people side. The reason is sometimes you have misclassification of workers. Yeah. Like you said, there's a premium to be, the banks that are lending you money look at how your workforce composition is laid out. And if you don't have an expert looking at that side of the business to anticipate how that is going to be impacted from a merger or an acquisition perspective, and then you find yourself reacting on the back end. You want to make sure that you have a great understanding of your workforce composition, that you don't have people in the background doing sweat equity, whatever that means, and there's no contract in place. You have friends that thought, the owners thought they were helping, but really they think of themselves as partners, and all of a sudden they hear there's going to be an acquisition. The friendship goes out the door. You're looking at, okay, where's my part? Like, I was here with you at 10 p.m., and you're like, yeah, but I incurred all the expenses. How come you want to, I paid you a little bit here and there. I paid for your hotel room. I thought that was it. And they're like, you're about to sell this company and make money. I was there with you. I need to be compensated. I see so much of that and it usually happens about year 5 to 7 for some reason, especially for startup entrepreneurs. They're fine. It seems like the first 3 to 5 years. They get to year 5 and 7, it's a hot mess. And then it's more expensive because if I'm helping you on the front end, we're preventing some of the mess. If I have to clean up your mess, you can only imagine it's going to be more money. So this is why it's important for attorneys that are helping structure the deal, or even with the franchises or scaling up or whatever it is you're helping with, understand there's a big part that you need an expert from an HR or someone like me who does labor and employment and the HR. Just call me, the Gene Consulting Group. Okay, shameless plug.
Hey. I'm all for the shameless. I'm for the shameless
promotion.
Yeah.
Just so that you're not reacting on the back end. That's all I have to say for now.
Wow, amazing shameless plug. I love it. So my job boils down to 2 different concepts: tax planning, and tax resolution. So depending on the stage of the process which you bring me in, that's what I'll be assisting you with. And it's typically better for me to assist you with tax planning. So in an M&A transaction, if you bring a tax attorney early on, we'll be able to assist you with SALT, which is state and local taxes, where we'll help you know which taxes. First of all, we need to know which side of the transaction are you on. Are you a buyer? Are you a seller? Are you involved in an asset purchase or stock purchase? There's different tax consequences to that. What are the different state and local taxes which you'll have to pay? Are there transfer taxes involved? All of these items need to be known. And there are so much more IRS consequences which we can go into, but I don't want to put you guys to sleep today. So all in all, it's better that you reach out to a professional beforehand so that there can be adequate planning and we can prepare for all possibilities which can arise. Therefore, I would like to guys you to reach out to me, Lukens Rivil from Memorial Law. I'll put my shameless plug in there as well.
We're here for the shameless plugs.
I love it.
I always tell people it's two type of people in the world that are professionals. There's vitamin professionals and then there's pill professionals. And transactional people tend to be the vitamins, right? Yes. You're supposed to come to us before you get into trouble because any litigators in the room? God bless y'all. Y'all are the pill attorneys, and we love you. If they don't listen to us, I send them your way. So last question, and then we'll open it up for questions. Does somebody have a mic down there? Round of applause for Carlos for helping us with the with the mic. He's earning his non-existent paycheck. Okay, so the last thing is any closing remarks. Like if they go back to their corporate clients, and one thing you want to stick out, particularly about why you're so valuable to them during the mergers and acquisition process, what would it be? Now, y'all can't take 3 minutes because it's supposed to be like one thing you want to leave them with, and we'll start with you at the end.
Okay. I'll just reiterate what I've previously stated, which is planification. Planning is key. You need to make sure that you reach out to all professionals in the process. So not just the attorneys, but also any representatives of the banks involved, so that you can prepare for whatever will come. Because if you have proper planning, then the transaction will go forth much smoother. But if not, then there'll be a host of issues which you'll have to deal with on the back end, and we want to avoid that. So planning is that's my answer.
I echo what you said. It's just, number one, identify the key stakeholders, and remember that HR does have a role to play. Even if you have legal counsel that does the labor and employment, they may not know as much as HR does. So identify the key stakeholders, the people that can have an impact on the transaction, and bring them to the table. And remember the Gene Consulting Group. And that's it. You'll be fine.
I would just say you all are incredibly critical. Again, I probably spend more time on the phone and in meetings with attorneys and my clients. You all are truly the translator when it comes to deals getting done, and so we thank you for that. But when I think about the attorneys that are our partners, you all are really like the translator. You're helping the borrower understand the covenant package, some of the provisions. You're helping them understand that in practice, because obviously when it's in a 200-page credit agreement, it's all jumbled to them, right? So you all are the translator in helping them understand that in practice. And then for the banker, for the lender, you all are helping them ensure that the remedies that are contained within are enforceable. So we really rely a lot on you all, and continuing to make sure that collaboration is synced up is very important.
Yeah. And my last remarks is taking off my attorney hat and putting on my investor advisor hat, sort of on a personal note. So there is going to be a great transfer of wealth. It's happening now. It's going to happen. And I think many times as attorneys, particularly in our community, we're just doing the job and servicing our clients. But there is personally an opportunity for you to get into the mergers and acquisition space. And I know people think it's only for multi-million-dollar corporations and things like that, but there are small businesses under 1 million or lower mid-market opportunities that are out there. If you have never heard of Reginald Lewis, he was the first black billionaire, and he was a corporate attorney. And his background was similar to many of ours in terms of growing up. And he wrote a book called Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? And it's about how he built a billion-dollar empire buying and selling businesses. So check that out. The other book that I'm going to recommend is called Buy Then Build. So many of us think about entrepreneurship and we think about starting something from scratch. Well, how about you can create some wealth by not starting from scratch and acquiring some businesses that already have cash flow. So that's just a personal note that I always try to leave with audiences, to personally go out there and think about the M&A space from a personal wealth standpoint as well. But we're going to have some questions. So if you have some questions, just raise your hand, and we have Carlos, who is going to bring around the mic to answer any questions that you may have. We didn't put you to sleep, did we? Okay, we got a question.
If I'm operating as in-house counsel for a client that is looking to sell their business or sell some equity in their business, what are tips that you would have for in-house counsel to help them prepare for that before we start bringing in external counsel or external consultants to make the process easier?
Ooh, I have a whole checklist. I'm gonna, yeah, I really do have. I live by checklist. But the first question is to clarify your answer. Are they trying to bring in investors, or are they trying to do like a wholesale acquisition? Because those are two totally different things. Oh, a wholesale. Well, not to beat a dead horse, but there's a lot of preparation that goes into that. So typically, what I do with clients is I have like a sort of pre-decision sort of meeting where I ask a series of questions to make sure not only that they understand the process, because I think people think, almost like selling your house. I got a billion-dollar business, and it's like, okay, let's temper, and try to get you to understand how this process really works so that you have your expectations sort of managed. So I would say to get with a professional, either an M&A advisor or, like I said, I have a checklist that I usually sit down with clients to ask those questions to make sure, one, that they understand the acquisition process and that they really do want to acquire, but I also walk them through the process of it and say, hey, this is what you're going to need. Obviously, you're going to need financials. Obviously, you're going to need a team of people. You're going to need a lot of patience. You're going to need, possible valuations and other things like that. So I would say get with somebody who has a really good checklist.
Just quickly, everything you said was spot on. Mm-hmm. What we often find in situations like that when it's really, really early on is that the company that is being acquired has not had a QOV done. Mm-hmm. That also slows down the process. QOV, quality of earnings, right? So that's when you have an independent third party come in and they look at your financials just so they can sort of tick and tie and make sure that you're reporting the accounting, you're following, GAAP accounting standards and things like that. QOV is important.
I'll stick to the people side because I echo everything you said. Having been in-house counsel myself, sometimes they don't want everybody to know that there's, they're considering this acquisition. So there's a level of privacy or confidentiality that's required at the high level or the people that know about it. But one of the things I used to do that I think is the best practice is to sit down and start thinking about who do you need to bring to the table, right? Because you don't have all the answers. And internally, there are people that can help you understand how to guide the decision makers. And so I would say start with identifying who you need to talk to, keeping in mind the level of confidentiality you need to exercise depending on who you're talking to, so that you can at least have a global understanding of the different areas that would be impacted. And then take it from there, use what Darshan and Hillary said, and I'm sure what Lukens is going to say, so that you can have a comprehensive plan or at least strategy to guide operations.
And you need to determine whether you'll be effectuating an asset sale versus stock sales. Mm-hmm. So stock sales is typically the easier One, however, if you are the seller, then you'll be subject to various capital gains taxes, whereas versus for asset sales, you have to understand the basis of the assets that you're selling. You have to understand what various taxes come into play. And last but not least, I think it's very important that you know what the structure of your company is, because if your company is a C Corp, it might be subject to double taxation, whereas if it's an LLC, it will be considered a disregarded entity, and there'll be various tax consequences at play. So it's very important to know those two things.
Yeah, it's a whole checklist. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you recommend some resources, some Horn books or Practice Law Institute type resources for people who may be new so that they can identify that checklist that they may not have?
I'm going to give you my card because literally I have so many books on on M&A stuff. But the two books that I previously talked about are good starters because one tells a compelling story and sort of inspirational, but the other one walks you through from the entrepreneurship side of things what an acquisition can do in terms of personal wealth. And there's another book that was really good, but I can't remember the name of it, but it really was published specifically for M&A attorneys. So I'll have to get that to you. So if you get my card, I'll take a picture of it and send it to you.
As far as resources go, I would recommend using either Bloomberg Tax, Westlaw Tax, or Lexis Tax. They all have very helpful checklists, M&A checklists, which can assist you if you need help.
Speak loud enough. Would any of your advice change based on the size of the business that we're talking about? I do a lot of work with very small businesses, so businesses that, let's say, maybe make under $500,000 or $1 million a year, have small amounts of employees, that kind of thing. And we've done a lot of our work actually in the litigation side where the buy-sell goes wrong. But but would any of your advice that you've given today change if we're talking about smaller size businesses?
Absolutely. Great question. I don't think I mentioned this. So I primarily bank middle market tech companies. So I would say middle of the road, I bank $200 million companies. My advice would change. Oftentimes what you'll find, and you probably know this being on the pill side of the equation, if I got that right, is that a lot of these companies, and I would say, the majority of companies that size are going to be, sole proprietorships or family-owned businesses. Typically, up front, they're not going to have the types of provisions, customer contracts, things like that in place because they're typically run by one or two people, maybe a consortium of a few people, but it's very handshake under the table type thing. And so what you'll find is, which you, I believe, have found, is that a lot of the work wasn't done beforehand, before there was some sort of LOI or transaction. And so there's a lot more work that needs to be done on the front end when you're looking at provisions, customer contracts, when you're looking at copyrights, when you're looking at patents, when you're looking at who the decision makers are, right? Because to Sandra's point, you get in a situation where that family business is being sold and they say, look, we're in our third generation, no one wants to run the business or no one's capable of running the business. You have a son in there, or you have a child, and, they have, grown up in the business and they expect something. So there's a lot more due diligence that needs to go into that planning beforehand.
I'll add to that. And Laurie, that's a great question because you and I have collaborated to support a small a client of mine. However, even on the labor laws, as you all know, I'm sure that certain laws don't apply to certain companies with a small number of employees versus a bigger company that have 50 or more employees. So it does depend. Also, it depends. They can be small, but across state lines, right? Or small, or a little bigger, but within the one state. So it depends. There are so many things that could impact. That's why you have to. I love the word "it depends," okay? Because I start everything with "it depends." But there are many things that could impact the transaction depending on how big they are and how many states they operate in, what states they operate in. New York laws are very different than Georgia, that allows people to do a lot more. And most importantly, the landscape is also changing, because depending on the administration we have now, what we've seen in the labor and employment arena is that it depends on the administration. So you always have to keep up with what are they doing now. The FTC had some requirements under our previous administration that now they're backing away from because of this current administration. So it's also keeping up with the various laws in the states as well as at the federal level.
My answer would be that it will certainly, or my advice will certainly change if it's affecting smaller businesses. So for instance, smaller businesses are far more likely to be LLCs, which would be treated as disregarded entities, or partnerships, which would be able to avoid double taxation if they were, than if they were C Corps. So that's definitely going to have a different, that's going to need a different tax analysis than if these entities were larger businesses. So, and that's just one small example of how these, how, you know, your tax impact of on an M&A merger, or I'm sorry, on an M&A transaction can occur. So certainly it will have an effect from my end.
May I add one more thing?
Sure, Sandra.
I don't know if you're going to say it, but I invite all of you to join the corporate section of this great organization, GABWA, because it is important that we all work in tandem, that we understand what value we each bring to the table. And I look at several faces in the room, people that I can call if I have a quick question, or, you know, even understanding what questions to ask. So it's good to be part of the community. Join today if you're not already a member. Thank you.
Thank you for pitching. Thank you. All right, any more questions? I think we have time for one more. Thank you all for keeping us on time. Okay, well, we're going to be here, and it is time for lunch here, but give our panelists a round of applause. And I think before we break for lunch, we have some more goodies that are coming from Truist Bank. So I will let them grab the mic and do another raffle or so. Sure.
Okay, just before Shauna gets into the raffles, I want to make sure you know we do have box lunches. I believe they were delivered, because I got a text as we were sitting here that they are delivered. But they will be outside, and we have different choices, just so you know. One box has everything you need, and we should also have, like, drinks outside. So I'll be out there guarding, because we have some veggies, we have tuna, we have chicken. I'm anal like that, I'm sorry. So you'll be lucky if I don't pull out the sign-up list and make sure if you didn't sign up, you don't get a lunch. But but it's going to be outside, and I just want to make sure you understand the logistics of it, that we do have choices, and it's box lunches, and okay, sorry.
We love choices. Before you go, let's get a picture. All right, over to Shauna.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, the lunch is outside. I already organized it out there. So once we do this raffle, you all can go and enjoy. Okay. Tamika Johnson. Come on up. I'll just start pulling so you all can come up. Jalay, I'm sorry if I said that name. Jayla, J-A-L-A-A. Oh, Jayla. And then, this is for you. Enjoy. Okay. Atrophia. Congratulations, everybody.
Oh. Yes.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, geez. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You have been important, but like one of the most important, but like.
Stand on to him before I take a photo. Oh, yeah.